Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we still have the same three projects in the shop. There's the 232 Ford chassis we're working on, the 58 Ford cab. On the to-do list, we've got a few things to do on the Camera Ladies Roadster. I want to get working on the exhaust, so we got the full kit in here. At the end of the last episode, I was hoping to get to it, but got sidetracked with going to pick up a friend's 32 Ford 500 coupe body. So what I want to do with this is start moving the exhaust back. Now, I still don't have the mufflers yet, but I got all the pipes. I'm going to do something different with the pipes here. I want to show you in the next few minutes. You'll see what's going on with that. On Brenda's Roadster, right now, there's a few cleanup things we have to do to it, but the body is supposed to be coming this week. Once the body is here, then I'll tell you all the things that the modifications we've been asked to do to the body. There's quite a few things he and she want us to do that we've already done to ours. And then over on the 58 Ford cab, behind the camera lady here, are the two inner and outer rear cab corners. What I was asked to do was see whether or not I can make copies of these and save these pieces for a 57 crew cab that he has, a four-door. At the moment, I'm quite certain that I can make copies of the inner ones. They're reasonably straightforward for us to do on this. But the outer ones are a little more complex. I have pretty decent metalworking skills, but I'm not sure yet if I can duplicate this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go get some tracing paper from a friend. I'm going to lay it out over this shape, look and see where things would have to be shrunk or stretched, and see whether or not I can actually do it or not. If I can, I'll step you through the process. If I don't think I can, I'm going to cut these up and I'm going to weld it on the cab. So we'll see which path is the one of least resistance and the most interesting one to do. So anyways, follow along. We're going to be working on something this week. So here's the first step in the Camera Ladies exhaust. Wanted to put a little twist on this. Her Roadster is not going to be a super powerful Roadster. As I said before, it's a stock 272 Y block. We're going to put a 4-barrel on it and upgrade to electronic ignition. We've got the tri-Y headers onto it. So, I mean, it'll give a little bit to it. But what we were going for is like the early hot rod look. So what we decided to do was to put these little cutouts on the side. They will be functional, but we're probably not going to open them up. But basically give it that look of some of the hot rods where, they would have a pipe coming out to the side with a cap onto it to go drag racing and bypass the mufflers. So that's the plan. Now the debate was, how far do you make it stick out? And I guess the answer is just enough so that if you do take the caps off of it, it's out from underneath the frame. And also we had to put it this far back because the one header on the passenger side was actually quite long. So you can see down there where I made the Y. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and replicate the same thing on the other side. This is as far back as we can go because I think the mufflers are coming by Camel. Normally I ordered them from Amazon, and most stuff you get 2 or 3 days, but for whatever reason, the mufflers are due in about 2 weeks' time. So what we'll do is, like I said, I'm going to do the other side of this, and then we'll just go as far as we can with it. Now I've got the driver's side of the Camera Ladies exhaust done. I did it the same way. I tried to make the side pipes kick out at exactly the same place. I mean, plus or minus half of an inch. You're not going to see from one side to the other, but still trying to do it as close as we can. And then what I did is I fabricated block off plates. I just went into the junk drawer over there, got some 1/4-inch plate, used the gasket to cut it out and then drill some holes. So like I said before, we want the look of the old school hot rod. It will function if we take these caps off, but we kind of wanted to have that look of like the 50s or 60s hot rod thing. We've got the rear rubber hangers on right now, so they're welded to the frame. Over on Brenda's, because the frame was painted, I made brackets that would bolt on, but in the case of the Camera Ladies car, I'm welding those brackets onto the frame and they'll get painted later on. So this is probably as far as I can go with the exhaust because I'm waiting for the mufflers, and the mufflers will be the next step. So what I'll do is I'll put that stuff away for now, wait for the mufflers to come in, probably, I think it's December 19th, which is like a couple weeks out before I get them. We'll start working on them. We'll finish it off then. We'll get on to probably working on the brakes, or we're going to go over there and work on those rear corners for the 58 Ford cab. As I mentioned previously, I was asked if I could try and make the rear corners myself. I do have, I guess, intermediate level metal working skills. Obviously, if you've watched the channel before, you can see that I've made quite a few pieces for all the 32 Fords and stuff, and made corners, quarter panels, and all kinds of different things. At the moment, what I can determine is that I cannot make this rear corner from one piece. If you can see, as I wrap the paper around it, all these wrinkles here. So with these wrinkles, it's areas where it's going to be shrunk. Anything where the contours are, you've got no wrinkles in that. Most of this stuff, I could get around, and, but even here, there's a crease here where there's a lot of wrinkles. So one thing that can be done is that you start in the bottom and then you stretch your way up. But most of the time, a panel like this, you're going to start with a rounded panel, and you're going to shrink the material in, more than likely with like a power hammer with some shrinking dies or something. So I don't have that equipment. It's a little bit outside of my skill set. Folks like Cornfield Customs, I'm sure a gentleman there could probably analyze this and make it up quite easily. What I'm going to do next, though, I'll try and lay it out if I could make a single piece, or maybe we can do a couple pieces here. But at the moment, for sure, I quite certain with my current equipment and skill set, I can't make this out of one piece. So I've been trying to break this panel down into more than one piece, and unfortunately I'm still coming to kind of the same conclusion about not having, I guess, the bigger equipment to do something like this. It is more complex than what it appears to be. For me. Now, again, there might be some people watching this that have the equipment and the skill set to do a panel like this. As far as shrinking a small amount of an edge, I have a shrinker over there, but this actually requires shrinking up further in here, so it would be more like a power hammer with shrinking dies could actually work in here further than, like the shrinker I have over there. I could shrink along this edge somewhat, but I actually need to go deeper into this panel. And the same thing, if you can see all these wrinkles here, as it folds over, there's a lot of shrinking that has to be done as it goes over and then tipped back out again. This feature here actually looks as though it's quite attainable as far as putting that shape into it. So I didn't try the back piece here, but like right now, what it's looking like, this more complex piece here, like if I could pull this off, then I would attempt the back piece, and then I would save this panel for the other project. So, but right now the conclusion I'm drawing based upon my equipment and my skill set is I'm going to use this panel over on the pickup and cut her up. The inside panel is much simpler, and I'm quite confident for the amount that I have to replace onto it that I can pull it off. So here is the inner panel. I'm more than likely only going to have to use a small portion of this. So something like this, relatively two-dimensional kind of thing, I can lay it out, I can put the beads into it, we'll cut this, bend the piece out, and I'll more than likely weld a piece in here. That way I could make like this panel to replace the inside of the cab. So unfortunately, I can't show you any spectacular metal shaping skills with a nice power hammer and some shrinking dies and something like that, but oh well, That's all I can offer today. We're gonna get working on the cab here and do the best that we can with the skills that we have and the equipment we have. So here's the underneath of the rear corner. Basically, you gotta always start with cutting away all that stuff that's no good and then make a plan of how to put it back together again. The inside from where you see up there to the floor is actually quite solid. I had to take a little bit extra piece out there because there was a soft spot. I can replace as much as I need to on the inside, but basically I'm only going to go up until I get the sound metal. Then there's another spot right up there. I'll come from the outside that we have to replace. So right in there, there's a piece from the step that I cut out previously. So this patch has to be welded up inside there. Now, one thing I realize is that I'm going to have to do the patch on the outside first because I'll have no way of dollying it behind, like when I do the welds here. I want to try and get the welds, like when I weld them, I'll dolly them out, try to smooth them out as much as I can. There's a little bit of a dent there I've got to try and get out, but I can't whack on it too much because we want to try and save as much of the patina as possible. But we do want to get it as straight as we can. So what I'll do is I'll take the little belt sander over there and I'll just sand this edge back a little bit so that when we weld it, we don't go up into the patina paint as much as possible. So first step will be to replace this piece on the inside. Second will be to cut this out of the replacement panel and weld it in. And then third will come from behind and we'll do the third piece. So there's step one done. I've welded the piece in at the bottom here. That was a continuation of the step. So that's all welded and reinforced. I've got it dressed underneath pretty good. And then I began the process of, I dollied this edge up because there's a little bit of dents into it. And then I kind of brought the paint back in preparation for welding. I cleaned this edge off here. And then now the big step will be to take the patch or the section that I cut off right here and then cut a section out of the repair panel. Now, more than likely, I will. I've drawn a line where the patch was. I'm going to probably come up 1/2 inch or more all the way around, and I'm going to creep in on the fit so that we can get it in there. Don't want to cut too much off of this, but that's the next step. We're going to cut that, and then we're going to fit her into the corner and weld it into place. So there's a section of the rear patch panel that I cut out. I didn't mention where these are from. It's a company called EMS Automotive in Detroit, Michigan. These panels are super nice. They're nice and thick. They're definitely 18 gauge. They're galvanized. Looks like it's galvanized on both sides. You do have to kind of sand off the galvanized area where you go and make your welds and stuff. But anyways, I took the plunge. I cut the piece off. I added about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch to where I thought I was going to cut it because I'll make a final cut. But there it is. It's kind of just tacked up there on the corner of the cab. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go from the inside and I'm going to scribe a line on the inside, compare that to the outside, and then trim a little more off on the outside. I'll use some Clecos to hold it in place. And then I'll use my mini grinder to actually make the final cut and start welding that in place. I thought I was going to be able to use the Clecos and overlap this joint, but I wound up holding it in place and then cutting it with the cutoff tool there on the mini grinder, and then using my little welding clamps to hold everything in place. Cut some vice grips on either end, and then also over here we put a couple holes right there you can see for doing the spot welds. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to weld it up with the MIG welder, and then we're going to dress the welds. the first rear corner all welded in and dressed. There, I don't know if I really need to do anything more to it. Now, the one thing I did notice is that this lip is bent over about 2 inches back on the other side. I don't know if that's intentional or if the body was dropped. So I'm going to have to figure out the way they did it, whether this is rolled over up to a certain point and welds up to a lip underneath, or it just stays like this. So for now, I'm going to leave it. We're going to investigate as to how that is supposed to look, and then we'll go from there. So next up is to start working on the inner panel and get that welded in place. Here's the next panel, and I did decide to make a copy of this panel. It is a little bit challenging to make, but not really too difficult. It's going to have to make it in a couple pieces here. So essentially what you do is the same thing as any other time. You make a paper pattern. So I laid out a piece of cardboard here. And so I've got the lines for the reveals, but also if you notice there, we've got to actually split it. Now, the one thing I realize is that with this being like a die stamped piece, they must be stretching the material up here, because when I cut the cardboard out of a flat piece of cardboard and I make the cuts, there's actually missing material here. So when they stamp it, that material must be pulled from somewhere else when they stamp it out. So I took that and I cut a piece of 18 gauge and then went over to the bead roller and we put these 2 beads into the flat piece of metal. And then unfortunately, I kind of have the end product here made up. I didn't take any pictures along the way, but you can see the 2 beads I made. I made the cut here. And then in order to create this section here, since I'm not stamping and pulling metal out of somewhere, I had to cut a piece of metal in here and then weld it in place. Now, the other thing I realized when I went to fit it underneath the truck, there's small pieces of a rusted area that's been rusted away. So I had to actually weld in another little wedge here so that when I put this up inside the car, everything laps over with each other and there's no holes going up inside of the truck cab, which is where either water comes up or water comes down. So right now, this panel, I've trial fitted underneath, it fits in. So what's left to do is I have to actually now trim this top section to fit up underneath of the cab. So it's pretty decent facsimile of this one, and then like once it's cleaned up a little bit and welded into place, it's going to look like an original. There is the first inside cab corner all welded in. Welds are okay. I would prefer that they were better, but the one thing about the inside is they got to be functional. They've got to be structural, like as in holding them good together. But the one thing is, like, before we put the paint onto it, and we'll get some primer onto it and put seam sealer on it, won't be able to see anything there. I did figure out how to get this one corner here. It actually, hold the light here. Sorry. So this piece actually is rolled up as I thought earlier, and then basically everything is covered from the bottom. These 2 grooves here in the back, I thought maybe they had to be pinched on the bottom, but if I go to the other side, they're actually open on the bottom. So these are basically functional drains as far as I can tell on the back of the cab corners. And probably a reason why some of them rotted out before is because crap got stuck in the back, water got into it, sat into it, and rusted away. So anyways, that's the first inside cab corner, and we've got the passenger side cab corner complete, and we're now moving on to the other side. I know this looks like what we just did, and it kind of is. What I've done now, I've cut out all the rusted areas on the inner and outer cab corner on the driver's side now. It's going quicker because I know what I can or can't cut out and kind of how it goes together. It has basically the same damage, covering about the same amount of area. So what we've got to do is right here, there's an extension that comes off of the step plate. I've cut that out, so we've got to replace that. Then we're going to go on the outside and we will cut not quarter panel, but the cab corner. So there's a rotted piece that I've cut off. So we're going to do the same thing. I'll draw a line on this, go a 1/2 inch up. We'll cut that out and weld it on. There is the back portion of the step. And then for the rear, we're going to do this. For the inner panel, we're going to do the same thing as what I just did over on the passenger side. So we'll cover this probably in not as much detail. I'll go a little quicker on it because it's basically a repeat of the passenger side. There's the outer cab corner all welded in place, and then I've got this extension all welded in from the step. Like I said, I'm not going to cover this corner in as much detail as I did the other one because it's basically a repetition. So last up is going to be, I'm going to make that panel to go along the back, and we'll weld her in place. So we're quickly wrapping up the last corner. One thing I forgot to mention here when grinding off the welds and stuff, a couple people pointed out from Bennett, a fellow YouTuber, Canadian YouTuber living in Australia there, Bennett's Customs. He made a point of telling us about how to square off your 3-inch discs, which allows you to grind in the corners here. And a couple of people pointed it out to me. I'd also seen the video and wanted to give it a try. So basically, like he pointed out, you take a 3-inch disc and then square off the corners, which what that'll allow you to do is you can go into these radiuses here and clean up the welds. So if you haven't tried it, it does work. Watch his video on it. He'll give a better explanation than I do, but essentially you basically take a 3-inch disc, square the corners off, and then what you have is these little lips here that will actually go into the corners and clean the radiuses off. So it does work. Give it a try. There is the last inside panel. Like I said, it basically made it the same way as it did the last time. Pretty much about the same size as the other one. I had to cut a little bit different up around the up where those vice grips are there, but just basically the same approach. Laid it out on a piece of paper, cut it out, bent it, and then welded the flange in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the butt weld up across the top first because I've got a really nice match up there. I can't use the panel clamps there because once I release them, the little metal things stay inside the car. So right now I've got a really good match. I'll dress up the rust up there just a little bit before I weld it. And then I'll just take a little screwdriver if I have to tweak the top or the bottom piece of metal in or out while I'm welding it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to open up the windows, get a fan so that I don't gas myself underneath here. And then we're going to weld all that up and she'll be done shortly. Well, we've got the rear cab corner, the inside all done. I took some pictures. We'll insert those of it finished. But like I said, I did the second cab corner, which was basically a repeat of the first one. Kind of hard to make double out of doing the same thing, but you get the gist of what we did here. So for all intents and purposes, all of the metal work is done on the 58 Ford cab that we were asked to do. There's still a little bit more work he wants us to do afterwards before the cab goes back to him. He wants us to put the doors on. We're probably going to put a coat of epoxy primer or some sort of primer on all the bare metal surfaces and then do something up underneath, which will be later on. But it kind of wraps up most of what we were asked to do on the 58 Ford cab. On the Camera Lady's Roadster, we did get part of the exhaust done. And as I said, I ordered mufflers. They said it was going to be December 19th, but miraculously, one of the two I ordered showed up yesterday, so I could probably start working on that. But again, that's going to be next week. But the other thing, you're probably wondering, why the heck is the 58 Ford cab jammed way over here? Well, that arrived. Brenda's Roadster Body arrived today. We won't be able to do anything with it just yet because it's too late in the week, but what it's here for, it's currently in primer. So what they asked us to do was do some of the modifications to this body that we did on our Roadster, which includes putting a reinforcing structure in behind the rear seat to stiffen things up, reinforce the dash so that the cowl is stiffer, and then they also want us to weld the firewall in and do the floor. Obviously, again, can't do that in this episode, so that's what we're going to start on next week. So that's it for this week in Coldstream Rod Shop. Got to work on the 58 Ford Cab, did some work on the Camera Lady's Roadster, and now we're going to look forward to doing some more work on Brenda's Roadster. So anyway, that's it. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Send me your comments, and I'll see you next week. Everybody take care.